Okay, in EiB Analytics 218, one of the best features is the new train of thought analysis. And this is really all about taking a standard report and being able to follow your train of thought to ask other questions about the data. Because I think that the common problem we have is that most reports don't necessarily give you all the answers, they just give you more informed questions to ask. And what we're trying to do here is see how you can answer those interactively without having to set a load more reports up or being proficient enough to edit the reports yourself to change the way the information is constructed. So in this demo I've got 3 examples from different industries. I've got a finance example here where you can see we're looking at an actual budget and variance P&L. I've got an example here from the shipping industry where we're looking at the time chartered equivalent breakdown with actual versus estimate and wanting to analyse that in more detail. And I have another example from an insurance related, one of our reference customers, Walsingham Underwriters, where they're looking at a triangulation of data here and looking at written premium, earned premium and claims, and they want to view this information interactively and through their train of thought analysis. So what do we mean by train of thought analysis? Let's just go back to the finance example here. Here you'll see that with the same as any other EiB analytics report and what existed in previous releases of the software, obviously you can interactively change things. So if I'm looking at these parameters at the top, I can change the calendar, the department, the cost center, the company, the measures here. So if I wanted to change this report from June to Q2, then it's a standard thing. I click and it obviously all changes. But I can pick any cost center here, I can pick any department here, and I can pick any company here. But what happens if I looked at something like UK sales and wanted to break that down dynamically on the fly by company, by cost center, by department, or even by a dimension that doesn't even exist in the criteria, because that is certainly possible as well. Now, in anything prior to 218 and similar to other products, then you could edit this report and change the orientation of that report. But that's not really something that senior management users would typically do. You could also say, well, maybe you've got another report that's broken down by cost center, which of course is true. That would be very easily to do, and you could close this report and then open up an analysis by cost center. But in that, I would argue you've lost your train of thought. You've closed down one report, and if you were looking at a certain company or a certain measure or whatever, you might have lost those parameters when you shut down one report and open up another. So this is all about interactively doing things now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you in 2 of the examples how we set this up, and in the third one, in insurance, we've already saved this report away. So how do I set up train of thought analysis? If I wanted to analyse UK sales by cost centre, department or company on the fly, I'm not saying the end user would do this. Whoever looks after the reports would build this into the report, and the process they would go through is they would have to go and click on Analyse By, and then it brings up all the dimensions that are in the database. In this case we are using a Microsoft Cube, and it will bring up all the dimensions in there. So if I wanted the user to be able to analyse anything by company, I would check that box here. If I expand the nominal account and say I might want to analyse things by account, I might want to analyse things by cost centre, I might want to analyse things by department. So I check all the things I'm thinking my users might say, well, I wonder if we could analyse by that. Now you might of course say, well, hold on, why don't you just check everything? But you can see from this particular cube there could be perhaps hundreds of these, and then do we make it really easy for users if we've got hundreds of items to choose for? But the software will of course allow you to do that. So when I click on close, you'll see at face value nothing has happened. But if I save this report away now and then reopened it as a user, so I'm now using the report as a user, I can go to any item in the rows or any column, and I can right click, let's say UK sales here, and it gives me now those train of thoughts. So if I want to say, well, I wonder how UK sales was broken down by department, when I click on that, it will create a new EiB analytics report. Now this is a completely standalone report. I could save this away if I wanted to refer to it in the future, save it back to the gallery for reuse, and I've got a brand new report. Or I could just say, it was a one-off analysis, that's all I was interested in doing. Now, of course, I drilled down on UK sales here, but these reports are live in their own right. So if I'd made a mistake, I wanted the breakdown by department, but I didn't really want it by UK sales. I wanted to look at it at total overheads. And of course, I could actually click on that and it would change that accordingly. And you can see we've only got overheads here in administration. So let's go back and change that to total sales. Next thing I might want to do is say, okay, well, I'd like that departmental breakdown, but I want to really examine my actuals in a bit more detail. So now I can right click on actuals and I could actually say, well, let's break that down by cost center. And now that will actually break that down by cost center. Now in this case there's only one, but if you had multiple cost centers now, you could see that broken down as well. And that's another new report. And you'll see this here, that if I shut this, it's workbook in its own right, it will go back to the previous train of thought, which was the breakdown by department. I shut that in its own right, and it will go back to my original report. So that was looking at a finance example. If I flip over now and change industry completely to shipping, here I've got a report that would be familiar to people in the shipping industry of the time chartered equivalent breakdown, effectively a profit breakdown to some degree. Are broken down between estimated, updated and actuals. And again, I could vary this by a particular voyage, but I might have other parameters that I want to vary this by. So again, I can right click here and do perform action and analyze by. So here I'm in setup mode. You'll see this is a much simpler cube to the finance one I showed before. If I look under the ship dimension, maybe I want to break down income by a ship. And maybe I'm more familiar with the code of the ship, maybe I'm more familiar with the name, it doesn't really matter, I can put both in here. And maybe I want to break down the voyage as well. Maybe I want to break down whether the trade was a contract or a spot trade, and maybe I want to break it down by the voyage or the start date or whatever. So maybe the start year, whatever. Any of those parameters I want, click on close, and as before, nothing happens. But again, I save the report, I reopen it. Next time I come in here, I can now right click on income and say, let's break down income by contract or spot trades. Click on that, and that will now break that down and show me my contract trade and my spot trade. And I could say I want to go to the updated version of that here and break that down by ship name. And when I click on that now, that will break it down across the different vessels. Now I've got all the functionality that exists in EiB Analytics here, so you might say, well actually I did that around the wrong way, maybe it would have been better to have the contract and spot in the columns, so I can obviously pivot that data as well. It's still fully interactive and allows me to do that. And the last example I have here is one that I have already pre-built, so I've actually opened up an example now in the insurance industry where I'm looking at written premium here. And I can change, obviously, this report as I could in all the others. I could change that to earned premium, click on OK. And you can see I can change quite a lot of things here. I can change the region, I can change age band, I can change underwriting year, all the things you'd expect. But what I can also do is, if I was interested in, say, in December, I could right-click here and break that down by age band. So this is actually looking at taxi driver data, premium and claims. And if I want to break down December by the age band of the taxi drivers, then just by right-clicking here, it will create a brand new report where I've now got the age breakdown in the columns. And I can carry on my train of thought here. I could say, okay, I've got it all the policies starting in December, but what happens if I break that down by the occupation? Now, occupation isn't one of the items that's actually in the criteria there, and it doesn't have to be. It can be anything in the cube. And now I've broken that down by all the different occupations. Now I think similarly to what I did in the shipping example, probably here it'd be better off actually if I pivoted the data here. So I've now got my age band analysis in the columns, and I've now got all my occupational data in there. Now obviously, as I said earlier on, we could easily amend the reports or open different reports, but the whole thing about the train of thought analysis is immediacy. It's about doing it now. I've got a question, I want the answer, buy this now, and I don't want everything to have to be pre-built for me and pre-configured. I just want to do that myself. So that's a fantastic reason for buying EiB Analytics 218 in its own right, is the ability to have fast reports and then backed up by train of thought analysis, which is a new feature in 218.